I'm Dr. Duke, and I'm joined again by a good friend, Dustin Nemos. Dustin is an author and a journalist, and he really is a forefront crusader in the battle against technologically censoring us, right? Those people who are going to try to use big platforms to shut down small conservative voices. Dustin, thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you, Duke. It's good to be back.
Well, I like your work, and I want to make sure we mention your campaign at the end of the interview here about how people can join the movement to stop bit burning, to stop censorship of conservative voices by the big tech companies. But before we get to that, I also really enjoy your commentary on the current impeachment process and what's taking place in the country. Give us a quick overview of where you see this impeachment process as it stands right now.
For me, having been directly involved in the fight to expose corruption since 2017, I feel like what we're having now is a culmination of that, and we're sort of reaching peak crazy. I don't want to overuse that term, but they're doing what they can to try to overthrow President Trump going into this, but that's their last hurrah. If they lose this, then they lose morale, or they just look really stupid. Either way, they're going to be weak after this, and I think that hurts their whole going into 2020 and everything else.
I tend to believe you. You're right. I think I agree with you on that. This seems like a fool's game they're playing. I mean, they were so roundly humiliated after the Russiagate thing. And the fact that after almost 3.5 years of Russia, almost within a couple of weeks, they had pivoted entirely to this, right? And it demonstrates a certain desperation and a real lack of professionalism. The fact that they're keeping everything cloak and dagger. They're doing this largely behind closed doors. If the media weren't there to protect them, if the media weren't there for shill for them and lie for them, do you think this would even be going on right now? If we had an actual media that reported the truth, this would probably be a great big nothing burger.
Absolutely. And to a degree, there are stages of media. There's the MSM, and everyone knows they're fake. Then there's Fox News, which has caught a lot of ratings because of the decline of the rest. They're still pretty fake. They're going along with a lot of the narrative. They're going along with impeachment's possible, and they're rigging their polls, they're throwing the election on the midterms before it's in, things like that. So we have to be very careful of who we do trust. But yeah, if the media, the fake and the liars were out of this, it would have been a home run very quickly.
It is amazing. That's a big question for a lot of conservative viewers. A lot of conservative viewers know a sort of a tidal shift at Fox News. They seem to perceive that it's not the Fox News it was 10 years ago. Shepard Smith, of course, famously walked away, and his commentary, his take on the news was becoming more and more politicized, less journalistic, and more hostile to the ethos of what people have come to expect from Fox. But there's still a lot of voices there that make you scratch your head a little bit. What do you think's happening to Fox? Is this the fact that the ownership changed a little bit, that the son replaced the father?
No, not necessarily. I think it's corruption and the effect it has from power. Fox was the conservative side of the two wings of the same bird situation. And now we have that third party, that third animal, which is the new Trump Republican. And that's a different thing completely. So, Fox has pretended to be pro-Trump so that you didn't come listen to folks like you and I on the internet because, they didn't want millions of Americans to just suddenly abandon all of fake news. They went to Fox instead, but there's still a problem.
How do you see this impeachment process? If you could even call it a process, it's really more of a make it up on the fly kind of thing. But how do you see it playing out over the end of this year into the new year?
I call it the circus now. I think that they're going to do the very best that they can to rig something up. It's going to fail utterly, and then from that point on, they're going to have to escalate either to physical violence or just give up. And they do have folks in the streets like Antifa that will do riots and violence and things like that, and they can cause problems for society, but no one takes them seriously. They have no chance in 2020. They have no chance of an impeachment. I don't know what they're doing.
So, Dustin, you're in Florida, and so you see a lot of this on the ground there. Florida is, of course, a very purple state in some ways. It's got a lot of red and a lot of blue in it. From where you're sitting and what you see, what do you think is going to end up happening here? I mean, there seem to be a lot of people, a quiet majority of Americans who are keeping their cards so close to the vest. They're keeping their powder dry. I mean, they're not kicking and screaming and fussing, but they're just silently watching in contempt of how this president, even before he took office, they started talking about impeachment.
Yeah, and I think that the mainstream Americans out there watching TV feel that way. But on the other hand, there is a very silent majority that's only silent because they're being censored. And otherwise they're screaming at the top of their lungs on the internet. So I don't even think it's that silent anymore. I think that as soon as the censorship stops, the numbers are really going to start to show to the surface.
It will be very interesting, I think, when the Democrats finally select a candidate. Because right now, it's Democrat versus Democrat. And one of the things that I think is a little bit heartening for people of our perspective, it seems to be the really radical left wing of the Democrat Party is starting to fall behind, right? Pete Buttigieg, who's a hypocrite and a liar, has started to moderate his tone. And what's happened? He's gone up in the polls. Elizabeth Warren now is starting to back off some of her more extreme positions, and she's starting to move forward. Biden's always been the front runner because many Americans on the left see him as the more moderate voice in a very leftist group of people. So there does seem to be a sense that even in the Democrat Party, the more you move centrist, the more excitement you seem to generate.
From voting Americans, and they're going to do better in the polls and such. But the most vocal people in their party are all very far left, and I don't see that stopping at all. In fact, I especially among my generation, the millennials, I saw an article today: 7 in 10 would vote socialism. I mean, that's deeply concerning. So I see people like AOC, the new superstars in this, not going anywhere. I mean, maybe she would because she's really destroyed her district's job opportunities. But others like her will take the place, and socialism is here.
Yeah, and 70% of millennials, college kids, would vote for socialism, they said. And 71% of 71% new poll today of Democrat college kids want to see the First Amendment rewritten. I mean, they want to see those kinds of changes in how our founding documents work. They're coming after guns. They're coming after free speech. They're coming after religious association. I always like to ask this question of people who've thought a lot about politics like you have. In the couple minutes that we have left, if you were advising, if you actually got to be an advisor for Donald Trump, if you actually got to be in the room with him and he turned to you and he said, okay, Dustin, from your perspective, if you had 2 or 3 things that you would advise me on in terms of how to handle what's happening, what kind of things or policy positions to advocate, what would you ask the president to do or counsel him to do?
It would be very simple. I would start by shattering the CIA into 1,000 pieces. I would demolish as much big government as possible and decentralize the rest. I really like the idea of one person put forward to get rid of 90% of the jobs in D.C. and spread them around. That's a great idea. I think we should do things like that.
It is amazing that D.C. is one of the most disaffected, dislocated parts of the entire country. The property taxes there, the cost of real estate there, it's almost like it's a separate country with a very progressive worldview where all of the politicians of this country have to be. It's why so many conservative people get to Washington and then they sort of move left, right? You almost never see somebody leaving middle America going to Washington and turning out more conservative. It's a big problem. And I think you're right, breaking that monopoly up and that beltway mentality, that beltway way of doing things that seems to corrupt everybody from politicians, even to the Supreme Court justice, right? The Chief Justice, right? Who was nominated for being a staunch conservative and now is voting with the Democrat judges, the liberal judges more and more.
Yeah, it's culture of corruption. It's the seat of power, and power corrupts. We know that. So it's very predictable, really.
So impeachment is the next big thing. And as you said, if this fails, I don't know where they're going to go. Already today, we saw in the news that one Democrat has already broken ranks. I believe one congressman has already taken a narrative that he's not going to vote for it. And so we'll see if more cracks ensue. To what degree, my last question for you, to what degree do you think establishment Republicans are propping up the impeachment campaign themselves or are eager to vote for it privately? Do you think there's a big wave on the Republican side that would quietly like to see this go through?
I absolutely believe that. There are many rhinos. There are many, I call them fake MAGA or Trojan MAGA out there who really don't particularly care about this president or his agenda or us. They just really want to keep that power going for them in D.C.
We've got a little bit of time left, about 25 seconds. Can you give the website and places where people can come to read all about you and join your movement?
Sure. I mean, my personal site is dustinnemos.com, Nemos, and the website to stop censorship is stopbitburning.com. That's a campaign to bring influencers together and our audiences and bring millions of Americans against big tech if needed in the courts.
Dustin Nemos, author, journalist, and political thinker, thank you so much for your time today. Always good to get your perspective.